Thank you so much. We've got the recording. I'm also going to post a Slido link in the chat, and you can see above me here, here's our Slido code as well. I think the first thing that I'll do, and I've just requested a screen share from Josephine, so there we go. Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, show that code, and then we're also going to do our introductions that way as well. Awesome. Okay, there's that Slido. Just to make sure everyone's getting into the Slido, like I said, we're going to run a poll really quick just to kind of get a sense. I also think this will be a good way to collect some information that maybe we can address throughout the course of this conversation. So let's get people in Slido, and then I'll start the introductions in just a few seconds. But I'm quite excited for this conversation. We have a really lovely panel of folks. I was taking a look at each of their kind of portfolios and resumes and LinkedIn today and noticed just an extreme wealth of experience. And I think the people we have speaking to us tonight on our panel represent a real ability to endure in design. A lot of years of experience, a lot of wealth of knowledge, I think, to tell us tonight. So yeah, go ahead and get in that Slido. Let me know how it's going. All right. Standing out among so many applicants, too many things to create, update, and constantly do. Getting traction. Matching keywords to job descriptions sometimes seems forced. One of the things I'd like to talk through this evening is some of the automated job posting and job application tools that are out there and kind of how those are working. Changing your resume for each job. Networking. Ghost jobs. Interesting. Yeah, I've heard some recruiter horror stories for sure. Fighting with AI. Okay. Tailoring. I think we've probably hit kind of critical mass, but I'll keep my eyes on this as we keep going. The other thing that we're going to use the Slido for is for Q&A. So if you've got questions you'd like to ask along the way, please drop them in Slido. I've got one of my colleagues here in UXPA NJ monitoring the chat. So just in case you end up with questions in the chat instead of Slido, that's okay too. But Slido is the way I'll kind of facilitate the questions. You can upvote each other's questions. So that creates a nice way to group questions that are kind of more important to the audience than others. So I'm going to let that run for just a second and actually get into introductions here. So this is me. I'm a design director with nearly 15 years of experience in mostly financial services. As I flip through the introductions, I'm actually going to use this as an opportunity to start the question asking if our panelists don't mind. So Arin, in just a second, Arin Lo, I'm going to flip to you and ask you these questions, but I'll introduce you first really briefly. So if you're willing and able, this is the first question for you. So Arin is an award-winning digital experience design and strategy leader with more than 25 years of experience. Arin is a mentor on ADP List, so it seems like you could probably take advantage of that if you're able. But Arin, would you mind answering those questions of kind of what's your hiring situation? What are you hiring for? If you're not hiring right now, what does that process typically look like for you?
Yeah, my hiring situation is I am not currently hiring. I am actually just about to join a new organization. And so what I'll do is speak to how I have been hiring at my last one, which just ended just a few weeks ago. And my process has been pretty consistent. Certainly for the last 4 or so years, I found myself back in the startup world. And I really try and keep my team's hiring process as lean as our approach to developing products. Um, so the startup I've been working for is a multinational agri-fintech named Thrive. And I've hired for 7 roles across the last year and a half. And following this process where I grew, where I grew a team from just 2 people up to 9 people. When seeking to hire product designers, I typically work with in-house recruitment teams and occasionally work with third-party recruiters. And while there's some nuance, I guess, in the early stages of the process when working with external partners, process generally works where I and my internal team begin by drafting a detailed job description, outlining obviously essential roles, responsibilities, team structure, organizational opportunity, and desired experience and skill sets, and post it on our career site and LinkedIn and other job boards out there. My recruitment team then takes over from there, collecting responses, screening based on how the candidates match up with desired capabilities and experience. I mean, ultimately, is this a good fit? And have an initial screening call with the candidate. If it feels like it could be a good fit coming out of the discussion, their profile and portfolio are sent to me and my team for review. And for the candidates we're interested in, honestly, I personally usually have a quick minute for first introductory call to speak to the role, cheerlead for the opportunity. I'm pretty good like that, and describe how the interview hiring process might unfold for the candidate, and ultimately start to feel out if they might be a good fit to move forward. Ultimately, in that 30 minutes, I want to hear how they tell their story and understand why they applied to and why they applied to this role and why this role appeals to them, what they're looking for. And then really after that, to keep it short and tight here, my goal is to keep the process at a reasonable length as candidate experience genuinely matters in the interview process. And I find that no more than 3 additional rounds of interviews will generally do the trick. And those rounds generally work for, they meet with a senior leader on my team. They meet with somebody else cross-functionally in the organization, somebody they're going to work with. And then ultimately, if they continue to move through the process, I bring them together really for a last round, which is a cross-functional portfolio presentation. And I really believe in the value of having a cross-functional team there, not just a design team there, as I'd like to see how candidates speak to their work and allow them to communicate with folks across functions, from product and engineering and data science and customer experience, as well as design, to ask questions to them and have questions asked of them. After all, these are the people they're going to be working with daily. After that, ultimately, even if there's not an offer, it's critical for me to have my team reach out to the candidate directly, right? Like even again, either there's an offer or there's not, but we don't believe in ghosting. I saw somebody mentioning that, or just sort of dropping the ball or writing an informal email or having a system send something. I really think it's critical to bring everything to a close, as we're a small global design community. And I think it's really critical to prioritize empathy and clear communication in the candidate experience.
Okay, awesome. There's lots of things I'd love to follow up on. I think we will throughout the course of the conversation, but you're using a recruitment team. I'd love to know kind of what that looks like. I'd love to know what makes a good screening conversation for you. So we'll continue that conversation as we continue our introductions here. But next up, we've got Lubina. Lubina Bogoeva is a recently promoted design leader in financial services with more than 15 years of experience, also a member of UXPA New Jersey's board. Lubina, I'd love to ask you that same question. What's your hiring situation? What are you hiring for right now? And if you're not, kind of what does your process usually look like?
Hello. I really wanted to, bring some joy and say that I'm currently hiring, but unfortunately not yet. Hopefully that will change in the new year. So our current hiring process looks somewhat similar to what you've just heard. We work with some agencies, and we also have internal recruiters. So by the time we get the resumes, they have been pre-screened by the recruiters. So we get a few resumes, maybe 5 to 10, and then we choose people to interview from this. Again, we do an initial about half an hour interview. And usually the hiring manager does this initial interview. And then if we think the person might be potentially a good fit, we proceed to another round of interviews when a panel of 3 people interview the candidate, and the 3 people are from the UX team, but they are different from the hiring manager, just so we can, get perspective from different people, and they are also at different levels. Maybe one of them is another leader, but then we might have someone who is, let's say, senior and someone who is more junior. That way we see different perspectives, how they interact. And then there might be a third round depending on the position, and also depending, are there two people or three people that we really are unsure of which one will be better. And it also depends on the position you're applying for. For example, when I applied, my third round was with my boss's boss. So that can happen also in some situations.
Awesome. I'd love to eventually dig into what the recruiters are doing before they hand you, I think you said 10 to 15 or 5 to 10 resumes. That's quite the funnel to come down from. I'm sure they're receiving many, many, many applications. So I'd love to kind of think through what that process looks like. If we haven't caught on to the order yet, I'm going alphabetical by first name for our panelists. So Phil is up next. Phil is a seasoned UX product and service design expert who works at the intersection of empathy, capability, and delivery. Phil has about 25 years of experience as well, so real staying power. And Phil, if you don't mind, that same question to you. What's your hiring situation?
Let me make sure I'm off mute. I am. Hi, everyone. Good evening. And if it counts, my uncle lives in New Jersey, and I've driven through it many times. I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area. I see we have some Virginians and some Washingtonians joining us. Not currently hiring, unfortunately, yet. We'll see what the new year brings, though. There's some strategic changes happening for the better. It'll be probably a little bit less on the UX and strategy side, maybe a little bit more on the sort of product design side. And if you ask me what the difference is between those two things, I will fail because those two things are very much intertwined. But as far as hiring processes go, one, we have both an internal marketing apparatus as well, internal recruiting apparatus, excuse me, as well as a fairly significant reliance on external recruiters. The nuance here being that my agency, Wong Duty, is a subsidiary of a very, very large offshore systems integrator, Infosys. You may have heard of us. And the stark difference in operational depth and breadth between those two is quite stark, in the sense that getting a rec, posting it, sourcing candidates, bringing them in for various rounds of interviews and portfolio reviews is vastly different on each side. So I won't go into too much depth on each one. Generally, in my decades of hiring experience, obviously the first thing you look at is a portfolio. I know Jared Spool has a very strident point of view on portfolios. I understand his point. It unfortunately does not apply to the organizations I've been a part of. We always look at a portfolio. It's really important, and I have very strong points of view on what a portfolio should have and what it should call out. But in a professional services context, and I've worked in consulting, I've worked on the agency side, I've worked in product, and I've worked client side. And from a professional services standpoint, I'm a very, very firm believer in teams. Teams of teams, smaller teams, what you used to call pods or wolf packs, what have you. And I believe in the synergy that happens at a sort of these micro community levels. So as much as I'm looking for skills, I'm looking for the ability to collaborate, to commiserate, to form a very special bond with the people around whom you're surrounded and for whom and with whom you work. The ability to develop and speak kind of your own language and have your own lexicon, and work in a very specific way. And that's, so one of the things I do, I don't talk about staffing so much. I talk about casting. And ideally the goal with these groups is to cast work to teams, not people to projects. And that's staffing people to projects, which is sort of a death by a thousand cuts kind of approach to just throwing bodies at a problem, as opposed to thinking about all the other things that we as experienced design practitioners like to think about, which is, uncovering problems, hidden truths, and doing it together in a collaborative way so that, no one's stepping on each other's toes. So I'm looking for personality. I'm looking for behavior. I'm looking for attitude as much, if not more, than skills. Skills you can teach, culture you kind of can't. So that's something I've believed for a long time, and continues to be true. And it's typically, the more junior resources we have, the ability to learn is the number one skill we're looking for.
Wow. There are a lot of people in this.
Yes. Yeah. I would agree with that. Was that supposed to happen? I don't think so. But lost my train of thought a little bit. Junior folks, we're looking for, do you have the basics? Do you have the fundamentals? Do you have the skills? And can you learn? And the more senior you are you someone people would want to follow, would want to be around, who can convince clients of a strong idea, who can work obviously with empathy, with purpose, and with intention, and can kind of create something normal out of chaos, which is more often the case than something that's handed to you on a silver platter. So, high level, that's kind of what I look for, the process that I take. I didn't go through, XYZ steps, but by and large, we start small and then work big to make sure that people fit into the community that they're joining.
I think there's two pieces of that I'd love for us to get to. The first is your strong opinions on portfolios, so we'll get to that at some point. Also, it seems like you must have some sort of chemistry test or a way to evaluate those interpersonal skills, and I'd love to talk through that. So we will get there shortly, but I'd love to introduce our next panelist here, Ryan Leffel. Thank you so much for joining us. Ryan is a user experience and product lead with more than 20 years of experience. And actually, I was doing some searching today, an incredible catalog of YouTube videos, upcoming talks, as well as he's the host of That Pivotal Moment of Change podcast. I had the joy of listening to the 3rd episode today. But Ryan, I'm going to ask you that same question, kind of what's your hiring situation? And in the event that you're not hiring, what's different about your process than what you've heard so far?
Yeah, so hey, everyone. Okay, so a few things. One, I think a lot is similar with the process, particularly a lot of the points Arin brought up. I'd really ring true for the way we've been going through our hiring process. Not hiring at the moment, though. We did just hire somebody a few weeks ago. We hired a brand designer based out of our Toronto office. And I'll talk a little bit about how it works for us at Priceline. So I think similar to what we've heard so far and along the way, early call with, we have our own internal recruiting team. We don't work with external recruiters, but we have an intake form that we fill out that just kind of is an overview of what we're looking for, details about the role, types of projects somebody will be working on. We meet with the recruiting team over a call just to talk through more particulars about, this is really the type of person we're interested in. These are the types of companies or schools we like to find somebody from. Really try to give them as much information as possible. This is the types of things we're looking to see in a portfolio, which, by the way, I probably have a little bit different view of portfolios than others. I think I'm kind of rare on that stance, but I think we'll get into that as we go along. Recruiting team goes off. They take a week or two, come back to us with an initial set of names. I always go in, or I encourage a hiring manager on my team to go in. We use Workday, so we can see all the candidates as they're coming in. Typically, a lot of people there, and unfortunately, I don't think everybody who applies probably is seen them. That's just kind of the unfortunate reality behind it. But we get a list of portfolios from the recruiter. Honestly, and just speaking fully transparently, I never 100% trust what the recruiters bring to us. They're not trained designers. they're recruiters, and we're trying to help educate them in what to look for in a portfolio. Every time we've been through this, I'll go into Workday and I'll click around, whether I see a company name that stands out or just something at a top level about a person makes me want to click. I'll find portfolios that the recruiting managers just overlooked, or sometimes they look at it and they're like, oh, I didn't think you'd want to talk to that person. It's like, that is exactly who we want to talk to. So I definitely put in time trying to make sure we're talking to the right people. Like Aaron said, I always like to do the first call just to meet the person, get a sense of who they are. I keep it super light, very conversational. It's not really, for me, that first call is not about getting into the work. It's just about understanding who this person is and why are they looking for a new role and why are they interested in Priceline? And is this somebody who I think is going to fit in with the team? Assuming that's a check, then we're going to move forward. I agree with what Aaron said. I like to keep it as quick as possible. So 3, maybe 4 calls. We'll do, the way I like to set it up is we'll do maybe 2 different rounds of 30-minute meetings that are 2-on-1s. We'll just get 2 different people from the team. They'll have a call with that person. We know pretty quickly if this is going to be somebody we want to move to the final round, which is a portfolio review. Portfolio review is an opportunity for somebody to come in and present their work. My expectation for a portfolio review is not that somebody comes in and says, here's my website, what do you want to look at? It's that somebody comes in and they have slides or they have a Figma, they have something put together that they can actually present and articulate who they are and what they've worked on. And I want to hear that person talk about what projects have I worked on, what challenges have I faced, where have I failed, how have I got through those challenges, what made this project ultimately successful. If I could go back and change something, because I think anybody who is a designer has probably put out a final project or product and you look back and think, man, here's something I wish I would have done differently. Or if this was up to me, if I was the creative director, if I was the client, I would have not have made that decision. I want to hear about those things. I want to hear why.
Awesome.
And so for me, that is really what it's about. Coming out of the portfolio review, we want to make a quick decision. Another philosophy I have about hiring is, for the job market, was hot for a while. I know it's dipped down. I think the good news is it is starting to pick up. And I think as we get into 2025, signs are pointing to the design job market coming back stronger than it's been. That's kind of what I've been hearing. And I do think it's going to be true. But I always encourage hiring managers on my team, if you find somebody and you really like that person, let's go after that person. Because I have seen too many instances where I have had managers on my team find somebody, they're like, I really like this person a lot. I think they'd be great. I want to talk to 5 other people. And then 4 weeks later, the person that you initially talked to that you liked a lot is no longer available. I think one of the best things that companies could do who are hiring is think about the candidate experience. It's really important. I think the candidate experience probably speaks to the employee experience when you actually get to a company. I think it's really important to be decisive, to treat people very fairly and with respect, and try to move as quickly as you can. And if you're going to pass on someone, let that person know why you're passing on them, because it's really important they get that feedback so that when they get their next opportunity, they could have an opportunity to stand out more than they did the first time around.
I think that's a testament to why you're here to have this conversation, Rand. I don't think you'd be interested in having this conversation if that wasn't part of your ethos. I heard you say something about your recruiters, which is you work to educate your recruiters. I'd love to dig in and talk about what are you teaching them to look for to give some signal to the folks on the call here, what might be something they can do with their portfolios or resumes to help stand out. I'm going to introduce our next panelist. It's Shweta Khedkar. Is a financial services industry expert with hands-on design leadership. She has 27 years of experience. She's also a mentor on ADP List, and she actually was a longtime volunteer for Girls Who Code. I found that to be true across all of our panelists, is that there's some sort of teaching experience, mentorship experience. So very excited to introduce someone who I've known for a very long time, Shweta. But I'd love for you to answer that question. What's your hiring situation, or what's different about your process than what we've heard so far?
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. Very nice and excited to be here, and my first time here on UXPA. So again, thanks, Lauren, for inviting me. very similar to a lot of folks who have mentioned about their processes earlier. So I'm not going to touch upon everything all over again. What I'm going to try to do is try to add some of my personal choices or how I operate. I know there were some questions about, so how do recruiters really know whom to get those resume to you, right? So what I try to do is when we have a clear job description ready, I really try to go over that with recruiters, and along with the hard skills which they look for, but I also try to look for the soft skills. And I try to set those expectations that what kind of a person I'm looking for, or my team will benefit, and who will be successful in this role, right? So setting that expectations upfront really has helped me a big deal to at least shortlist some of the good resumes coming to me, funneling through so many kind of resumes. After that, of course, I also try to talk to the candidate first and foremost, because probably I have also tried the video interviewing platforms. So I know we'll talk about the AI platforms and stuff like that later. But those interviews, video interviews or self-interviews have helped me just to kind of know the person, get answers to some of the basic questions, very basic questions we would ask for a person, right? From that, we go to the first level of interview where I talk to the candidate. And when I talk to the candidates, more than the hard skills, I am definitely looking for the right fitment, because I do feel that the skills come, you know the skills, you know the tools. It's more about applying the process in your own context, in your company, and every company may have their own different process, right? So I look for soft skills. I look for their attitude, their aptitude, their approach, overall communication style, because to me, communication is very, very critical for anyone who is in US, because we need to work with so many stakeholders, product, technical folks, the end users, the stakeholders. It's critical that the communication of the person is very clear, crisp. The person is able to listen and then respond appropriately. Also, open to hear feedback, right? So I look for those, and once I feel that, yeah, this person is probably a right candidate, the next level is more of a the panel discussion, which is inclusive of a portfolio review or case study review. I come from a financial background, so I know that most of the financial companies do not allow you to send anything outside the company. So it's a real constraint for some of us to really build a portfolio with real examples. So I am okay with not having portfolio upfront, but I'm okay with having a case study. And I do look for a kind of an overall process they follow, which is applied process, not a standard design thinking or user-centered design process, because everyone applies that. But how do they apply that? What kind of challenges do they face? How have they solved the problem? If they are stuck on something specific, how have they dealt with it? How have they negotiated some of their solutions where they feel very strong about and they are getting pushbacks, right? So those kind of discussions we try to have. And in that panel discussion, I try to have representative from a lot of teams, which is definitely a technical team, because they need to work with the technical team very closely. Of course, the product representation over there, and maybe some of other stakeholders like from marketing teams or branding team, etc., who actually have some of the influences on our work. So after that, what happens is then we shortlist and we kind of select a candidate. There might be situations where I may want to talk to the candidate again, or maybe some of my senior leaders may want to talk to the candidate just to make sure that we are covering the 360 view. Because a lot of times I read someone saying that candidates will absolutely do their best and put their best show in the interview. That doesn't mean that that will reflect in their work, right? But senior leaders have the eyes, have that kind of attention basis of behavior and basis of communication, so which has helped me in the past. So I do try to get some of those senior folks or some of those eyes to evaluate and help me evaluate the candidate. And from there, it's typical kind of negotiations, discussions, and final offer, hoping that the candidate is still available and would join if we really like it.
Okay, I heard you were the first person actually to mention video interviews. And so that's something I'd like to come back to and talk about. I know some folks have encountered these AI-driven video interviews as a first step. So I'd love to talk about that. We'll come back to it. Last but not least, and I know he's been sitting a little while to be introduced, but I'd like to introduce Vincent. Vincent is a UX manager with nearly 20 years of experience driving large-scale UX initiatives from vision through execution. He actually was former faculty at the beloved but now closed UArts in Philadelphia. So welcome, Vincent. Thank you for being here. I'm going to ask you that same question. What's your hiring situation, and what about your process might be different from what we've heard so far?
Thank you, Lauren, and hello, everybody. Truly honored, by the way, to be with this esteemed group of people. And to be honest, I'll try to hit on the things that weren't hit because I think there's a lot of patterns and themes coming up. Right now, we just filled, and I just personally filled a number of roles between London and New York, so not hiring at the moment, just wrapped some hiring up. And by the way, I grew up in Monmouth County, New Jersey. I have been really in and out of this this wonderful community for years and years. So really happy to be with you all. In terms of some things that I could really maybe just color in around some things and really particular to me, I would say that definitely overlap with how most come in the front door, which is completing an application online. Recruiter screens and recruiter passes things on. All the systems, tools, all the things that all the good people here have talked about, very much relevant, especially in a global organization that I'm in right now. I think one thing I want to highlight for me is I spend a lot of time with recruiters to be well versed in specific requirements and nuances of the role. But what I really try to do is help them be objective. That's the thing that's most important. I'll give you like very tangible example. Objective for a lead type role, are they at 7 to 10 years of experience in what type of companies, right? Those are really black and white. I try to take the subjectivity out of non-design professionals and leave the more subjective, ambiguous things to us, the design team, but the really hard black and white. That has helped, and believe me, this comes from a lot of lessons learned, a lot of time with the recruiters to help check off the sort of matrix of what's in, what's out. I also believe that a cross-functional design team and product and engineers or whoever else we're working with is in the mix. I don't go at it alone anymore. I guess the older and the more I get into things, the more humbled I am with humility of my understanding of the traits we're looking for. I love going at it in group setting, and especially when it's respected, trusted colleagues and peers. I think another thing that's really important, and we've gotten down to, at least in my organization right now, every organization is different, and I have a different opinion if you're hiring in professional services versus hiring within an internal team in a global organization versus working in a startup or a venture-based team. I think the formula is really different. Right now, we're going with a two-stage approach, believe it or not. Well, two and a half. And I think stage one, overview interview, is really about what level you truly at. I think really that first stage is about your history. I think your business acumen, which is, I think that's the topic I care most about in this meeting. When I think about what I can offer our community in UPA right now, I'm going to hit this business acumen topic pretty hard today. Because I think that's probably the skill set, one of them that matters most in how our craft is unfolding. So business acumen and just results orientation. And I think that's two part, a little bit about career history, where you've been, and a little bit of where you're going, and a broad-based overview of the work you've done. Not deep, broad. And then second interview, portfolio deep dive. I'm a firm believer in portfolios. I'm no shame in my game there. That is crucial for me, but it's not about the quality of the work. It's really about how that portfolio is presented. And I think there's a lot of behavior and a lot of style that comes through there. It also starts opening up the personality traits, right? The things that we really care about: honesty, motivation, curiosity, right? Those are just some examples. And I think in that portfolio deep dive, again, it's not about the quality of work. Of course, we're keen to that, but it's about how it's presented and keen to the behaviors that are coming through. The 0.5, I said 2.5. The 0.5 is also that 0.5 the other people this person would work with. I use that 0.5 as soft skills. Are they resonating with our product leaders or product managers? Are they resonating with our engineers, the people that they're in the trench with every day? So I like that 0.5 for that. And sometimes maybe not necessary. Sometimes we just know. Um, I think over the last, especially the last organization and now this one, the thing I find that's really important, and it's a pattern or trend, I find like the internal referrals have proven to be over and over again the best results. Meaning the people that stick and the people that actually end up thriving in the role, it's crazy if I told you the number. I'm talking like the percentage is probably over 90% when it's referred internally through a trusted team member. It turns out to be that might be the right person, which really where I land on here is your network really, really matters, whether it's colleagues, peers, or it's senior people, finding great success through referrals.
Okay, I love that. I'd love to come actually back to that and understand kind of who make the best referrals. Is it other design team members, or why don't you go ahead and answer that question? Is it design team referrals, or is it any partner referrals?
I'll generalize that a little bit. I find it to be the people that really understand the culture, the role, and just general the dynamics of the team and the organization. So being in a couple different teams, that tends to be the thread. Do they really understand it? And then can they actually say, I know a person who would actually fit perfectly and thrive in here?
Perfect. I'm going to take a little logistical transition here to start actually going back to the top of the funnel, talking through those recruiters is going to be my first set of questions. But I'm going to have Josephine, if you don't mind, will you spotlight each of our panelists so we get kind of the view of all of the folks we're speaking with this evening? Vincent, I'm actually going to start with you since you just spoke and we have you present. You spend a lot of time with your recruiters. You're talking about objective things, saving the subjectivity for your team's interviews or your interviews. What are the objective things that you're asking recruiters to look for beyond kind of time spent?
Time spent one. I think type of company that they previously worked in, other. Meaning like if we're in enterprise applications, where is one getting that skill set? I think that's one experience. Other things is education, believe it or not. I'm a firm believer of design craft is learned and practiced in years, not in weeks or months, right? So that's another black and white. Where did they go to school? What did they study? Where did they learn the craft of design? Did they learn it on the street? Were they self-taught? That's where I have the questions. And if it's a really senior or important role, I'll go with traditional education, believe it or not. And I realize some of these things are rather questionable, so please, I'm just being honest. Other things that I would look for is um, do they have a portfolio or not? I think that's an immediate, like if someone's not sharing their portfolio in an application, skip. At this point, if you're not having a portfolio, not ready to present your work and share it, then maybe this isn't the team for you. I think at this point it's just been so black and white for me. What some other criteria are there result measures, or I'll give you this last one. Are there impact measures anywhere presented in how they're presenting themselves in their resume or portfolio? If we're not talking about impact at this point too, we're probably not interested in talking.
Okay. That feels like that business acumen piece, right? Too, being aware of your impact on the business outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't want to underemphasize the point that like with the recruiters being black and white, I've learned is so important. So that we can go and assess the other things. I don't want a recruiter telling me I didn't like their design skill set or I didn't like the way their portfolio looked or other things like that.
Okay. The other person I'm going to turn to here, and you mentioned it as well, Ryan, which is you spend time with your recruiters. I'd love to understand kind of how are you instructing them? What are you telling them to do for you?
I try to explain to them what we do as designers and what somebody coming in to the new role, what team they're going to work on. So I'm in a travel company and Priceline, flights, hotels, rental cars, checkout. We have an AI UX team. There's several different teams, right? So whenever we're bringing somebody in, know which team we're bringing them in for. So I try to make it very clear what types of projects that team works on. We do a lot of testing at Priceline, so it's always a tricky piece. The recruiters know we do it, but I don't really, I'd prefer that they don't actually really get into that with the candidates, because I think that opens up a whole can of worms. I'd rather deal with that with the candidate than the recruiter. But it's like, this is kind of what the day-to-day looks like. This is who the person's going to look like. More important than that to me for a recruiter is, who are we looking for in a person? Like, I agree, the business acumen piece, that is huge. And I mean, that is something that a recruiter can pick up on. We want to make sure that the person they're bringing to us is going to be somebody who we actually want to have a conversation with. When it comes truly into the skills and evaluating the craft of design, I'd rather myself and my team do that than a recruiter do that. So I'd say it's trying to explain, but keeping it fairly high level, enough that they understand the type of person, the type of background that we're looking for. If they could get us that far, then we could do the rest. Unfortunately, it's, in many ways, I mean, I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but in many ways, it's kind of a crapshoot. When you're applying through LinkedIn or through a company site, and like I said, we use Workday. I mean, there's the last role we had, within a day or two, there was over 300 names, and the reality of it is, no one's going to go through 300 resumes, right? 300 portfolio reviews. Unfortunately, as I wish that we were able to do that, but we're not. And so it's, like I said, the recruiter sends us names. We do spend time. I encourage everyone on my team who's a hiring manager to spend time going through portfolios and try to find people who you might be interested in talking to that the recruiters didn't find for you. But it's still not the percentage that in reality it should be.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to pick up on a question from the Slido. And I don't have anyone particular in mind, but I'll kind of keep my eyes open to see if any of you would be interested in answering this, which is, how does the hiring process, I'll say maybe this recruiter portion of it, differ between UX researchers and product designers, or even UI designers, if that's a capability you hire separately? Maybe Arin, if you don't mind, I'll call on you. Any thoughts on UX design versus research versus UI?
Yes, I've built and led a number of research teams across my career, and it differs. I mean, for me, right, like in the end, it is about measurable outcomes, and ultimately how a researcher is telling the story of how they interacted with a team, with a problem that they needed to solve, ultimately what the outcomes were, and again, how they work with others to integrate them or not into the process. I don't expect to see polished visual work, which I definitely do in a portfolio from designers. I don't think that's, not only do I not think that's fair, it's not really what the output should be. But if it's included and it talks to how their research informed visual outcomes, I love to see it. It's sort of cherry on top. But again, ultimately, I mean, to keep it short and sweet here, for me, what I'm looking for is, how have they been able to influence process, bring voice of customer and data into the process, and ultimately help an organization move towards a more data-centric outcome.
Okay, awesome. Shweta, I'd like to get back to those video interviews. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've implemented video interviews, how that process is going for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so far, not too many, but there are two video interviewing platforms which I have interacted with personally. There is HireView, and there is another one which is called Mongene. These are both video interviewing platform. So it helps to some extent, because one of the challenges really funneling through so many resumes and getting to a right candidate. To be very honest, even the hiring manager doesn't have that much time to really go through everything and set expectations. And I mean, we all have 24 days, 24 hours a day, right? So this is exactly where setting that expectations with the recruiter or the person who is helping you hire the candidate, and then giving them some set of basic questions, 5 to 8 questions, something like that. which the candidate will actually try to answer, apart from giving them their introduction. And this is all captured in a self-recorded video interview. And there is another panel before it even comes to hiring manager, that panel from that company actually evaluates, and then they provide a rating on that, which really helps basis of what you have set expectations, what you're looking for, and then mapping to the ratings and getting some initial feedback helps you set some expectations and then proceed further. So again, to manage your time and really get to the right candidate, to some extent it helps. Does it help 100%? No, I wouldn't say no. Yes, but it definitely helps to some extent, because you save some time, and because you have set some expectations with the company who offers these interviews, right? They have a skin in the game, and that's exactly how it really works. And in my opinion, yes, that works to some extent, at least to understand the initial behavioral aspects, initial expectations with regards to what you look for, understanding their honesty, understanding their communications. And so many of the key skills which I look for are kind of taken care during that first level of interview. And then forward, you actually can manage your next 3 or 4 set of interviews in a much efficient way to capture something else, because you can't go beyond 3 to 4 levels of interviews anyway, right? So if this is covered in first round of interview, then it helps you to seek some additional insights from the rest of the interviews which you and your team are going to conduct.
I've heard the word honesty mentioned a few times, but Shweta, I'm curious if you've got some specific recommendations you'd make for folks who are participating in those video interviews.
Yeah, one is definitely the kind of eye contact and the body language, right? And the tone of their communication definitely tells a lot. Again, it's not easy to really gauge, or whatever you gauge, there is no guarantee that it will be same way. But at least because it's a weighted interview, then it's kind of a confidence you build that this person is something which could be a best fit. So at least you take a chance going forward, right? But again, you probably verify your own understanding as you go to the next level of interviews. So after the first level, you meet with the person really to make sure that was your understanding from the first video interview right or wrong. And then basis of how you evolve that, you kind of plan the next set of interview. And then you may set some expectations with the panel discussion, like the panel who is going to interview that, okay, here are my observations. I would really love you guys to also verify my understanding, but also get me new and fresh perspectives, because you guys are my blind spots, right? That's how these interviews have definitely helped me to at least eliminate some of the candidates. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Vincent, do you want to react to that one?
I just want to build on it. I think it's a fabulous answer. But since you hit on honesty, there was just a list of things that I found really important when I think about what I can offer our community as insights to this topic of hiring, finding the right role. And the honesty thing, I'm going to preface, but I'm also going to be very honest, that I realize the market's tough right now. I also realize and see that everyone's really hungry. Everyone's really wanting the roles. What I have found in these interviews is that some people are taking credit for work that their teams do.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the portfolio review. And this is where I just want to encourage integrity and honesty and sincerity, because getting yourself into the wrong role might be more painful and more sort of setting yourself back years than finding the right role where you're being honest and straightforward in who you are, what your skill set is, what it's not, what you've done and what have you not done. And too often a portfolio might lead to, I've done all of this, and when person shows up, it becomes so clear where the skill set is and where it's not. And this is where, like, I think assessing for honesty, and for me, there's no black and white. I mean, there's no gray zone between that black and white of just being straight up sincere and having integrity for the work you did, the work you were part of as a broader team. I found that as to be such a key thing, so important.
I totally agree with that, Lauren, right? Because it's like
Huge.
I do expect the candidate to kind of say that, yeah, here is my role and here is what I was part of, right? That I understand the overall process, but I understand my role, what I can do, what I cannot do, or what are my limitations or what are my dependencies, right? If I get this, then I'll be successful in doing this to pass it on to someone else who can success. So it's those clear kind of handovers are also very important. And what do I need to set that expectations with someone else like product manager, like if you give me the requirements in this fashion by this time, then I'll be able to move forward, right? So that's exactly where that whole process to me comes into picture, and then clear responsibility and clear communication, because a lot of time candidates say I and we, and there is a confusion between when they say what, right? So that really impacts a lot. And that's I mean, I totally agree with Vincent that that brings that whole honesty and transparency and taking responsibility of what they can and cannot do.
Ryan.
So a few years ago, probably at this point, 2.5, 3 years ago, we had a role open up for a senior product designer. Senior product design roles traditionally a little bit harder to open up. It's much easier to get a junior or mid-level role than it is a senior. We had a senior. It was going to be a big role. It was somebody we were going to heavily lead on to run a very important piece of the business. Somebody applied to that role who had 1 year of experience, but they actually the portfolio looked strong. She had a strong portfolio. Hiring manager was like, let's talk to her. It's like, absolutely, let's do this. This person came in incredibly honest. They were willing to learn. They did show a good sense of business acumen. Long story short, we ended up downgrading the role to an associate level role, gave up a senior hire to bring in an associate level person because they just seemed like they were very honest. They seemed like the right person for the role. This person is now just on the brink of being promoted to become an actual senior product designer. But they went into that process incredibly honest. It wasn't, I have more experience than I do. I have worked on projects that I haven't worked on. But they came in, they were hungry, they showed a willingness to learn. They were very open. She was very open about what she didn't know and what she wanted to learn. So I completely agree on the honesty piece of it.
Okay. I think we're starting to transition into a conversation about kind of portfolios, getting past that screening process, getting through the video interview, getting through the recruiters. I think we've got a few tips for how to kind of optimize there. There's probably more we could ask if we have some Q&A time at the end. Ryan, I know you had a perspective on portfolios. What makes a good portfolio? I'd love to kind of hear what you have to say there.
I mean, to me, portfolios are a tricky thing, and it also, where are you in your career journeys? Somebody who's a director, senior director, VP level, who maybe hasn't been hands-on for a long time, its portfolio becomes a much different thing. Or you haven't actually been hands-on with the work. You probably are not putting in the time to actually build the portfolio. If you're newer in your career, I get it that the portfolio is important, but I don't look like I can't fully evaluate somebody off of their portfolio. And the truth is, throughout years of interviewing, I have talked to designers, junior mid-level designers who did not have a good portfolio, who completely blew it away in the interview process. And I've talked to I can think of a few instances where I saw a portfolio where it's like, man, this person really knows how to brand themselves. The work is beautiful. I cannot wait to talk to this person. And then you have the conversation with that person, and it's 30 minutes of your life that you're not going to get back. So I think the portfolio is important to me. It's more about how the person communicates who they are in the portfolio, more so than the work that they're actually showing in the portfolio, because there's a lot that goes behind the work that's getting done. Somebody brought up, the point earlier. It's not, the work is a team effort, and I want to understand what you did. But I am interested in, to me, the portfolio is more about how are you telling your own story about who you are and how you're branding yourself. And one other thing I would like to throw in there when it comes to portfolio, if I do look at a portfolio, I actually want to see something about who you are as a person. Forget about work. Like, we're all human beings, and the portfolio is a good opportunity to connect with other human beings. What are you interested in? What are your hobbies? What do you do when you are not working? What are you interested in? I think being able to communicate who you are in a portfolio is probably, to me, just as important as the work that you did.
I want to jump to Phil because I know you also had a perspective on portfolios, but I want to say I see the conversation happening about neurodiversity and video interviews, and I do want to come back to that because I think that's an important topic. But let's kind of wrap our portfolio conversation, and then we can come back to that. So Phil, I'd love to hear your perspective on portfolios.
Yeah, and before I go into my rant, I want to share some really, really valuable advice I got from a creative recruiter. And if you don't know who she is, you should learn. Her name is Lee Andrews. She's based in Baltimore, Maryland. She's got a pretty national presence. Used to host a live stream called Wednesdays with Lee or something like that. And I had the opportunity to be on her podcast twice. The point that Ryan is making about knowing how to tell your story and brand yourself, I cannot stress the importance of that. And it does get back to authenticity. One of the things that I see the most in portfolios that's lacking is writing. It's not necessarily the pictures that you put that represent the work. It's the story that you tell about the problems that you solved. And I got to say this, it's not just what you did, it's who you worked with. And are you going to thank them at the end of the story, of the case study or whatever it is? Because none of it, I can't think of anyone who's on this call or working in this field who does this thing by themselves. So especially if you're at the level that the panel is at, if you say, I did this, ooh, I hate to say you're probably not a very good leader, because you got to use the we language if you're in charge of people. And it's really, I'm not here. You're not here for me. I'm here for you. Right. So I want to know who you did the work with and call them out. I want to see how you write, because that is about convincing someone that your idea was right, that your idea worked, that your idea, back to the business acumen part, provided value, it had an outcome associated with it. And I will say, yes, I'm looking for beautiful work, because I feel like beauty is table stakes. But the problem with that is the dribblization of our work. Anyone can pull down a UI kit and a mock-up and make something, put in a beautiful Apple device and make it look great. I want to see the sausage making too, though, at the same time. And I want to see some ugly stuff turn into beautiful stuff, because beauty is not just how it looks, it's the extent to which it solved problems, made someone's life easier, more efficient, and you did it together as a team. And that's the egoless, part of it. I could go on and on and on and on and on. But the other thing I'm going to say about that is I'm actually probably not going to meet with you until the portfolio. So I think I heard you go through the video interview and the blah, 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 and then you do portfolio. That I reverse that. Because the portfolio gets you the conversation. Now I want to know you as a person. And if I can get some of that from the portfolio, all the better. And that's why it's important, not because I like to check a box, because I'm trying to know the individual and how they're going to fit into the collective.
Absolutely. Lubina, we haven't heard from you in a little while, so I'd love to tap you, but we absolutely heard. We want to see that portfolio as part of the application package. It's there front and center. Lubina, do you have anything to add there?
Oh, yes, we definitely review the portfolio, and we look at the portfolio when we get the resume. And by the way, I also want to stress that we pay attention to the resume. Your resume is the first thing we see. And so it's important both how it looks, and the writing as well is very important. Do you have the ability to get your point across in this very concise format? Do you show the results that your work provided, and so on? So all of that should come in the resume, because the next step is we check out the portfolio. Obviously, place a prominent link to your portfolio in the resume. And we also check out LinkedIn or any other social media that you put in the resume as well. Again, for the same reasons, we can see how you come across, both the visual presentation, which shows your taste. I know nowadays you can grab lots of good images, AI generated or whatever, but what you've actually picked to show there shows your taste, your ability to curate. So that's important too. And then, we spend time reviewing the portfolio before we decide who to interview. And all of the interviews, by the way, are on video. And then, as I said, first the hiring manager has a conversation with the candidate, and we might go through the portfolio. Usually we do go over the portfolio. It's not necessarily called portfolio review. It's more of a, conversation about what's in your portfolio and getting the feel about what you did versus your teammates. And I totally agree about the point everyone made about honesty. Be straightforward about what you did versus what your teammates did, because it's important to explain how you interact with them and how you are a productive member of the team. And as I said, after the hiring manager does the interview, we have another interview with 3 other people, so they can go over the portfolio and ask questions about it because, they haven't been on that previous interview. So yeah, definitely polish that portfolio.
We're getting some good questions
Lauren,
about, yeah.
Could I just throw in one more thing? Just a quick tip, I promise to be fast. I think one thing that's really useful when you're putting together your portfolio is take a step back and write down your story. Who are you? Where have you been? Why are you looking for the role you're looking for? So I do a lot of mentoring also on like ADP and other forums. And when somebody wants a portfolio review, before I even look at the portfolio, tell me about you. Who are you? And I always hear something fascinating and there's something interesting. Everyone is uniquely individual. No one puts that stuff in their portfolio. Talk to someone once who is in sales. Oh, I was in sales. Like I can't talk about that. So you work closely with customers to understand what their problems are to help them to help deliver them a solution that's actually going to make their life or their job better. Yeah, no, that's what I did. Talk about that because that is related to design. So I'd encourage anyone to really like write down what you've done, how you got to where you are, and you will find dots that will connect.
Arin, go for it.
Plus ones to all of this. One quick thing I just wanted to add. If you are presenting a digital experience for your portfolio, make sure the UX is pretty tight, right? And consistent, right? If you're starting at your portfolio and the user experience is shoddy, it's a pass right away. And the other thing, and I think this plays into the same thing, is free of errors. And maybe again, this plays into business acumen in some ways too, right? But the quality of your work, like check your spelling, check your consistency, make sure that what you're leading with is as perfect as you can make it. And nobody's perfect, but this is how you're presenting yourself out in the world. Do your darndest to make it as polished and tight as possible.
Shweta, I see you with your hand up, but I'm going to pitch a question at you as well, which is, what about NDAs? What if I have an NDA? What can I do with my portfolio?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to that first one that especially on ADP list, right, there are requests to review portfolios, and off late, right, the junior UX UI UX designers who are trying to get into this industry, they all have a pattern portfolios, right? They are taught in, let's say, Google certification or some certification, and they all go through the same process with hypothetical use cases. And I do understand that don't have a real world experience, but at least they need to understand the context behind the solution, right? Because otherwise it becomes such a, and that's why my perspective about portfolio first has changed in the past few months, I would say, because these portfolios do not, I feel that sometimes I'm wasting my time because I'm seeing same thing all over again and again and again. And if you ask for details, they are not prepared, nothing is in their back pocket. So why should I go with portfolio? Rather, I would try to gauge them, their personality, their aspirations, their attitude, and then decide whether I want to go with the portfolio, because portfolio is like 1 hour, 1.5 hours at least, right? So do I need to invest that much time for me and for the panel interviews to go ahead? That's what, especially for the rising designers, please don't mimic something because someone is telling you. Try to put your head and heart in it, because that's the crux of what the hiring managers are looking for. And more than what managers need, that's something going to help you succeed in your role. So it should be a long-term view, not just getting a job in your hand.
Very good. Let's go Phil next, and then Vincent.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk specifically about the NDA. Let me put my hand out. The NDA piece. So I live in DC, right? And there's a lot of people working on some top secret stuff that I am not allowed to see. It's worse than an NDA. It's like I get killed or something. Wait until after January for that joke. There was a lot. To answer that, I want to talk about the one time I hired someone without ever seeing a sample of their work. And I have a very specific ethical dilemma with doing practicums during interviews. I don't believe in having people do work for free. But this is the one time where, you know what, I get it. I can't see your work. You worked at, FBI and, who knows, the Homeland Security. Okay, so maybe it's just a sketch, or maybe we just talk through the problem, but show me something. So I did a practicum. Turned out to be one of the best hires I've ever made in almost 30 years. It was the man I called him just a couple months ago. He's a beautiful human being, did great work. So there are times when it can happen, and there are workarounds. But also that somebody talked about referrals. It's gold. I believe and trust in my team. If I hired them, I'm gonna want to hire people for them to work with, and if they give a referral, like that actually goes a really, really long way. Especially if they're under NDA or some sort of security issue.
Okay, Vincent.
Yeah, I definitely want to go down the referral path, but I'm not going to. Some discipline right now because I have a really strong point of view on NDAs, and I wouldn't have it without the experience of over a decade on the professional services side. And in professional services, whether you're in consulting, agency, whatever, I think you have to respect the integrity of your clients, right? So like I think the really generic example is one team is working for Coke, the other team is working for Pepsi, can't really share between each other. And by working with attorneys within these organizations, knowing that I'm just going to be really straight up and direct here. I'm not going to mince words. We have to be selling work to get more work, right? That's how professional services works. That I have learned that it is very possible to bring case studies together and tell the story of the work that you did without giving away NDA signed information. Now, I'm not talking Pentagon level work here. I'm talking about healthcare, life sciences, financial industry, big technology. In these areas, there is a way to generalize information and generalize portfolio in a way that you tell the story or can tell the story of what you've done, what you've accomplished, what results were, how you did it without giving away private information. And that's the point that I mean, I wouldn't know this without the experience of doing it. So when someone who looks like they're a fantastic candidate says, I cannot share anything about that because of strict NDA, I'm sorry, I'm going to call bullshit on that. I don't believe that there is a lot of truth to that. Perhaps on governmental level, which I'm not going to make believe I know a lot about, or public sector. But other than that, I don't believe that that's a reason not to tell the story of to everything everyone else is saying, who you are, how you work, what the results are of the work. You don't have to give away the information to do that. So I want to encourage folks to bypass that path of I have an NDA, I can't show, I can't talk about it. I think there's an in-between.
We've got a quick follow-up question, which is, are password protected pages okay on a portfolio?
Perfectly okay. But yeah, I'll tell you what, though, another secret, the passwords are awfully wrong, like often wrong. On the resume, it's the wrong password. Guess what? It takes 2 weeks to get back to the recruiter getting back to you, you giving the password, recruiter coming back to you. Just make sure they're right. Make sure that it's all there.
100%.
Yeah.
We're gonna see Ryan agreeing. Anything you want to add there, Ryan?
No, and then I mean, make sure the password works and make sure the password is somehow accessible.
Absolutely.
Can I just yes and what Arin said earlier? If your portfolio website does not display the kind of work that you want to be known for, that's a dead giveaway. Give yourself and your representation the kind of attention you give your clients' work, because guess what? You're a product. That's some advice from Lee as well. You're a product being sold as a service to a client. Your client is kind of your employer, but it's the same kind of thing. You're designing for a product. The product is you. So give it that kind of attention and love that you would give to your clients.
Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a transition. Looking at the clock, we like to keep it kind of around 9 o'clock when we close out. So I want to do a couple things. One is I want to have that conversation about neurodiversity. So I'll tee up that question in just a second. Secondly, Jamie, I'm going to call on you and see if there's any questions in the chat that we've missed. And then third, I'd actually like to go to our Slido. There's some questions that have been upvoted that I think we should get to. So if you haven't yet, folks who are listening in, get into Slido, post your question, vote on questions. We'll get a top, probably have time for 3 or 4 maybe. But let's start with the neurodiversity question. So folks have been kind of chatting, talking about neurodiversity and how possibly it might conflict with the ability to be honest. Folks who are neurodiverse might need to mask, may not be able to make eye contact in a video interview. So I'm curious, I'm just going to open it up and see if any of you would like to kind of speak to how does neurodiversity enter into the application and interview process? It's not a softball, so it's a tough question. What recommendations?
I want to just touch on back to the results orientation of things, right? I mean, I do believe that body language, eye contact, those things matter at some level, but ultimately, taking the path of integrity and the highest path, we often don't go down the path of anything but really what is the quality of the work, the output, and can this human being deliver and offer value? Right. I hope that's not a softball response, but I think if we focus on results, we focus on quality of work, I think that maybe would be one point to consider in this one.
Okay. Anything else? Lubina, did I see you come off mute there? Or go ahead, Phil.
No, I want to give Lubina some time. Sorry.
I've never had an instance when somebody came right out and said that he or she is neurodivergent. So I was kind of trying to think back of people that I've interviewed, if that was a possibility. I think, as Vince said, if they show results, that shows that they can do the work. I would actually appreciate the honesty of coming right out and saying that they're neurodivergent, because otherwise I'll wonder, why weren't they making eye contact, or why did they seem distracted or something. That will clarify it for me. That said, at least on our team, we work closely with other teams and stakeholders. So it is important to be able to deliver presentations, to communicate with the others. But if we know that somebody needs that special accommodation, there are ways that we can fit that individual into the team. Because, for example, there are development teams that, for one reason or another, don't have the habit of using video. So, we can try and match that individual with teams that already work in an environment that's going to be more comfortable. So there is definitely room to accommodate talented individuals.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
It just comes down to casting again for me. There's a space for the practitioner who may be uncomfortable in settings that require that the kind of behaviors and cognitive skills that are presentation worthy. And there's other folks who thrive in the spotlight and may not have the craft skills. Look, these are not questions you can ask somebody to divulge. And if they divulge on their own, it's going to make your job a lot easier. But again, can you thrive in the environment? Does the work speak for itself? And is there a space for your skills? It just comes down to that. It's quite simple. If you can pick it up and cast them appropriately, then they may be the most valuable employee you've ever had. So sometimes you got to take that chance. And if you know that it's not a place that's going to thrive, you got to be honest and say, look, it's not a culture. It's not a skill thing. These roles require X, Y, and Z. If you can't perform that job, it's not an exclusionary tactic. We're actually serving them and setting up for the next opportunity. That's going to be a more successful spot for them.
If I were to summarize what I'm hearing, it kind of sounds like there's three buckets of things we're looking for. It's the work, the quality of the work, the craftsmanship, the soft skills, as well as the relationships, the interpersonal skills that bring folks to the table, either through referral or through kind of the relationships they build in the interview process. I think I would encourage any neurodivergent folks on the call to say it's all three of those things, and there's an equation that adds up to fit. And so it just depends on your particular flavor. So let's move into, Jamie, I'm going to tap you really quick and just see, is there anything in the chat that I missed before we get just a few questions out of the Slido?
Yes. So we had a question in the beginning, and this was in regards to collaboration. Somebody was talking about when they found that it was hard to tease out soft skills as everyone is always on their best behavior. So they would love to understand the types of questions and conversations that are had in order to vet good team players. If anybody,
I'll actually go right back to Phil on that one. And this is the casting conversation. So how do you facilitate that?
I might be a little weird in this regard, but if you're on your best behavior, chances are I'm not going to fall in love with you. I want to see whatever it is about you that is unique. If you let something slip, I like the spontaneity. I like the realness. Somebody used the word authenticity. That's quite accurate. If you're buttoned up, that's fine. Absolutely, you want to be professional. Of course, I'm not saying come on the thing and wearing, a tattered T-shirt. But I'm saying, like, be you, be your authentic self, because that's what I'm going to expect of you every day, day in and day out. We're very, like, right now, my group is incredibly real. We have a lot of fun. We work hard. We play hard. And want to see a little bit of that secret sauce that makes you you. I'm hiring you for you, not your portfolio, not the skills, not the project work, not the logos. I'm hiring you. So be you, whatever that is.
Jamie, anything else up there?
Yeah, I think that was a great answer to that. We had another question about the view on referrals from team members who might refer a candidate because this candidate asked for one and the team member has never worked with them. Let's see, what's the panel's view on referrals from team members who might refer a candidate because this candidate asked for one and the team member had never worked with them before?
Yeah, it doesn't count. I mean, the dynamic is just randomly, Sarah refers person in. The happy path is Sarah comes to Vincent and says, I have worked with this person before at X, Y, and Z. They, based on what I know about working here for the last 3 to 5 years or the last 2 years, I think they are a perfect fit. I think they could absolutely nail it here. I really want you to talk with them, Vincent. It would be silly, ridiculous of me to say no to that, right? Sarah comes to me and says, "Hey, someone reached out to me on LinkedIn. I don't know them, but they look good." That's similar to, and I'm not saying it's easy, folks. I'm not saying it's easy to kind of build your network. That's not, I know it's not easy, but I don't know if there's much value on the second path, right? Like it's the honest referrals, the people that know, have worked together or have a sense. And then I know there's another question floating out there is like, well, what if I don't have a connection? I think that there's always a connection, right? Like if my dream, and by the way, I do have a dream of working for Spotify one day. I tell everybody this, so it's not a secret. Like, and I don't know anyone there, right? Once I'm ready to act on my dream, oh goodness, there will be nothing that stops me using my network to connect a person to a person to a person who knows me, that could vouch for me, who could really like that will put their energy into, I'm going to make sure you get this connection here because this is your dream. This is where you want to be. This is what you stand for. And I think that's how using my network might work, just to exemplify that one.
I completely just want to say real quick, I completely agree with everything Vincent just said. The one thing I would say though is if somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, like so and so reached out to me on LinkedIn, I think they look good. Here they are. At minimum, it gives that person a better chance of being seen by the hiring manager than if they just submit through a site. So although it might not be as valid as this is somebody I've worked with or whatever, I would still recommend anybody still try to do that, even if it might not work, because it's going to give you a much better shot than if you don't do that.
Is
Be
there a way-
bold and take a chance.
100% agree.
I see that actually the top question in our Slido is very much related to this. Is there a way to improve, if it's a second degree connection, someone you don't know, but you've reached out to them, is there any way to try and improve that connection? Anything a candidate can do to kind of turn that second degree connection into more of a first degree connection? I see Phil nodding his head. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, shoot your shot. Basically, I mean, if you're in the area, if they're in, Basking Ridge, and you want to go, have coffee with them, in Paramus, do it. There's no harm in asking. It's like, let me, give you the chance to get to know me a little bit. I'm interested in this. This is where that whole, this is the personality in flight kind of thing. It shows that you're ambitious and somebody said the word hungry. Your hunger it could be a superpower for you. If you care enough to reach out, arrange the meeting, buy the coffee, whatever it is, that actually can go a long way and set you up for that next meeting with the hiring manager. Go for it. You have nothing to lose.
I want to build on that too, and I trust that this panel is going to keep me honest. But I would say it's the generic reach outs and the reach outs where no one's done the homework, no one's really looked at the role, no one's really looked at the organization, the company, the team, where those tend to get overlooked. If the authentic approach and where this is truly a role that you've done the homework on, it aligns with your objectives and your goals and your aspirations for where you want to be, more often than not, someone will make time for you. I believe it or not, make time all the time for people that they've looked at it, they have a point of view of who they are, where they want to go. I think just being a great community member and sort of design citizen I find our community so helpful in that way. But I would just say avoid the blanket reach outs, the generic. But hey, if it aligns to who you are, your objectives, and this is the last thing I really wanted to hit this one here for all the good people is passion really matters, especially in this day and time. Passion and purpose. I find that people who are just broadly looking for a job have a much harder time than asking themselves who they are, where they want to focus, and where their passions are. And I feel like passion really opens doors, if I could just add that.
I really like that passion and purpose because again, you know, when you go to get a job, it also has to be something that you want to do and that you like too. So in a way, you're kind of interviewing, you're going on an interview, but you're interviewing too. You're interviewing the company. So
I think in the interest of the clock, I'd like to do kind of one last thing as we close out here. And that's in a world I see the frustration happening in the chat, which there are lots of folks looking for jobs. I would say it feels like there are more people looking than jobs open. I can't quantify that, of course, but that is absolutely what it feels like. I think in that world, I'd love to hear from each of you kind of what's one piece of advice that you would give, and then we can kind of close out the evening. So if anyone's willing to jump in and start, what's some advice you would give to folks who are having a hard time?
I could jump in with that real quick. One, don't give up. Quite often, the best things happen when you're not expecting it. Don't be afraid to get out there and network and meet people because you never know where it's going to take you. And if you do get the interview and you get to go and speak to a company, do your homework and know who that company is and have questions prepared to ask about that company. I've had interviews before where I'm like, oh, I think I like this person. They'd be great. Then it's why are you interested in Priceline? And it turns out they know absolutely nothing about Priceline or what Priceline does. And so, despite it being a good conversation leading up to that point, that's probably going to be it.
Who else might like to take that question? Lubina.
I had actually somewhat unrelated, but I wanted to point out that there are alternative ways, especially for people who don't have experience, because you get into that loop. Everybody requires at least 2-3 years experience. And so the company I work at, Chubb Insurance, has apprenticeship program for people that don't have UX experience. And they have the TAP program for people who have graduated from college, again, with little to no experience working. So these two are good alternatives. And we get usually 2 apprentices and 2 TAP associates per year. So that's an alternative way for those who are very new.
Okay. Would anyone else like to take that question? Some advice, bit of inspiration? Vincent.
Yeah, and I alluded to this. I think the passion and purpose thing is really important, but let me just go one level deeper on that, and I'll just put the word focus here. I think if we're thinking about any sort of marketing campaign as an example, we have to focus, right? We have to focus on who we're targeting and where we want to be, and treating your career that way is my greatest recommendation. It's so broad, so that means that right now the people that stand out are the people that stand for something. My interest and my objective is in this, and putting energy into that. Now let me put some examples of what putting energy into it means. Are you writing on the topic? That's cheap, that's free. Are you maybe proactively designing solutions and putting it out there into like the social verse, right? Where it's demonstrating without the broad blanket of I need a job. And believe me, I empathize and I understand we need to work. But I think it's going to help folks when they focus on who they are, where they want to focus, and then putting it out there proactively of what types of solutions they're designing for, what's on their mind these days, showing the work and doing the work without even the job, already be doing the job. Again, I'm not saying that's easy, but by focusing and demonstrating passion and purpose in a focused way, I feel like that will bring you to the people that you want to connect with and that want to connect with you.
I think
Yeah.
job seekers often go breadth, and it sounds like you're advocating for depth.
Yeah, strongly advocating for that. I really do believe that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that try not to be desperate, because that shows up in your interviews, and that kind of shows that you are ready to accept anything and everything just because you need that job, and that won't go long run. So don't try to be desperate. Try to be patient as much as possible, and think that things will come to you when it's supposed to come. So try to have a positive approach and attitude. If you are good, you will get good.
And practice, right? Practice interviewing, you know, do it with other people, take interviews. If 100% it may not be the right fit, get comfortable telling your story and speaking to your work. I think so many people go in who are potentially very introverted or haven't practiced at all and just stutter through their entire experience, and you know, and maybe they are the best candidate, but ultimately they're not. The polish in that conversation just isn't there, and somebody's moving on to the next candidate. So practice as much as possible.
Yeah. Let me add one piece that, first of all, Arin, perfect advice, and maybe schedule some mock interviews with people who can give you really sound and objective criticism about your technique. But I want to go on the flip side of this, which is to say, look, what we do a lot is practice empathy, right? I've been in your shoes. I know what it's like to be walking the streets wondering, what did I do wrong? Is it me? It's not you. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is we're very passionate about this work. We care a lot about what we do. We know it's meaningful and it's important. But at this moment in time, it's really important to separate yourself from your job. You are not your job. Your career is important, and you want to make sure you're making all the right choices. But this decision that the market has made, in spite of you, is not it expressing its value for you. Okay, and you have to give yourself the grace and the space to detach from the search and think about it objectively, and think about yourself again a little bit as a product to be sold, because it's not personal. I promise you that. You matter, your work is important, but also give yourself a break. You deserve it, and that'll help you. That'll help your performance in the interviews. I can almost guarantee it.
I see a ton of additional fantastic comments and questions. I think if our panels demonstrated anything tonight, they are more than willing to help. They've shown that in their academic work. They've shown that in volunteering for ADP list. I don't think I'm overstepping in saying they would be willing to connect with you on LinkedIn. So please reach out. Please connect. Anyone from UXPA New Jersey's leadership team, of course, willing to connect and continue to connect. We have monthly events as part of UXPA NJ, a few in-person events here and there, and are really all about continuing to grow this community, support each other, advance the practice of design. I'll pause and see if Josephine, Jamie, or any of our board members have anything else to add, but I think we can call it a wrap on this evening. Okay, I think that's everything. Thank you. Thank you
so much. Thank you so much, Lauren, and wonderful being here.
And thank you for having us. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Lauren. Hey, Lauren, I'm so sorry to steal 2 more seconds. One, I just think you did a fabulous job facilitating. Kudos to you. And you also posted something on LinkedIn today by Peter Merholtz that I think is very important for folks to consider in where to focus. I think he's spot on in what he's described there. So I'm going to point to that post that you made. I think everyone should be tuned into that, because I think it's where most people can focus of where design's happening.
There have been a ton of resources, including that Peter video. I think we'll put together a UXPA NJ post with all of the resources, links, etc. So stay tuned, follow us on LinkedIn, and we'll be talking to you all soon.
Awesome, guys. Good night. Thank you so much.
Nice Cheers, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Have a good night.